What if I told you that your cloud contract might be costing you more than your entire logistics network? And what is more, you wouldn't even know why. Most companies, they think they're saving money in the cloud. They're focused on discounts, reserved instances, and locked-in contracts. But there's a bit of a catch. What if those savings are actually costing you more money? Today, we're unpacking what I'd like to refer to as the Hotel California problem of cloud spending. You check in, but as they say, you can never leave. And if you do, how much will it cost you? Joining me today, thankfully, is a subject matter expert in all of this, James from Strategic Blue. And we're going to be exposing the hidden costs of cloud lock-in. We're going to be diagnosing, aspects of cloud dependency, and one question you need to ask before signing your next cloud contract. All right, James, look, let's start with the biggest myth. In cloud spending, corporations automatically think savings equals discounts. But that's not really the full picture, is it?
No, not even close. The first thing that I would say to organizations is you can't save money unless you have a budget. Otherwise, it's just a cost reduction. So a discount is just a cost reduction. You need to have a budget to realize a saving. And the second thing is, and you referenced it earlier perfectly, once you're committed, right? You can't get out of it. You're stuck for 1 year or 3 years. And that might hamper the organization in the future. They might want to do modernization. They might lose a customer and their cloud spend might go down. Or they might actually want to set up a multi-cloud environment and actually move away from key vendor risk. But commitments can stop that from happening. So there's always a bigger picture than just chasing a discount.
All right, man, look, I think that's really interesting. But I'm kind of a person that needs some practical aspects of that. So can you give me an example of exactly what you're talking about?
It's a bit like the Hotel California analogy, right? I always look at commitments like prepaying for your train fare for the year. The days that you don't go into the office, or you don't use the train, you've still paid to go to the office and do the traveling. So commitments work in the same way. We see organizations that are either tied into commitments or tied into private pricing agreements. And then they go through massive product changes, or there's really good reasons they're modernizing, or their tech teams are trying to do a fantastic job, and they're stuck with these massive commitments that they cannot get out of with cloud vendors chasing them.
Do you know what, man? It's fascinating. But it does sound to me like there's an awful lot of hidden costs associated with cloud. So, okay, let's break it down then. What are the hidden costs that companies that, they don't see them? And what should they know before they sign a cloud contract?
Well, there's a lot of hidden costs with cloud. 3 examples that spring to mind. The first would be egress costs. It is very easy to move data into the cloud. It is actually really expensive and quite hard to get it out of the cloud. So that is the first sort of golden rule, is be mindful of egress costs. The second is proprietary lock-in. And becoming very fixed on certain technology stacks within the cloud providers. That can limit you as a business. So again, be mindful of that. And then lastly, as we've already spoken about, it is rigid commitments. So to get a discount from a cloud provider, you have to help them capacity plan. That's how discounts work. Unfortunately, you help them by capacity planning by committing to 1 or 3 year contracts, and that can cause wastage if you're not using that specific technology.
So James, look, with all these hidden costs and with all of these hidden things within cloud, it strikes me that we should probably take a little look at procurement. So let's talk about it in a bit more detail. Most supply chain contracts, whether we're talking about transport or warehousing, they are negotiated. And what is more, they're benchmarked and structured for flexibility. But, cloud contracts, they sound like a completely different beast. And why then is it that our traditional procurement strategies fail?
I think the first is, organizations are so used to making those, with IT, 7-year, 10-year hardware investments. And then the CFO has now got per the second billing on the cloud, and that's quite terrifying, first of all. And it's sort of the inverse of what you've described with the supply chain world, where you're saying that the contracts have the flexibility built in, but the cloud actually has the flexibility naturally in there with the on-demand capacity and all the flexibility of the cloud. And then funnily enough, to get the discounts, you have to help them capacity plan and commit to 1 or 3 years. And that's how the discounts work.
If I think about that and I try to extrapolate it a bit further, what would you suggest is the right approach that a cloud procurement team maybe should consider?
Well, I think they should treat it like a supply chain asset. They should go back to doing the basics really well: forecasting, budgeting, looking for those hidden costs or those little areas that can be more flexible. You use the cloud for what it's supposed to be used for. Commit where you can commit, but be flexible where you can be flexible. And I think that's what organizations should be doing.
Right, Jim, so one thing that's clear, and this is absolutely close to my heart and the heart of every single supply chain leader in the world, is that every company today has a digital roadmap. We know that we want to have AI, we know we want automation, we want digital twins, we want simulations, but all of that runs on the cloud. What if our roadmap is unaffordable?
That's a big risk. I personally think that companies find it quite hard to future forecast their technology stack, right? There's so many new services, there's so many new things available in the industry, and I think it's really hard for people to understand their roadmap. And if you haven't built in a flexible nature to that roadmap, you could find yourself a little bit unstuck.
Okay, so, good. You've highlighted even more problems for us to think about, but, what's the fix? What takeaways should we have for this?
I think if we take the lessons learned from supply chain management, make sure that you're negotiating flexibility into the contracts as much as you can. It is tricky with the cloud providers, but if you can, absolutely do. Try and forecast and understand budgets a bit more. If you haven't got a budget, you can't realize the saving, is my view. So you need to understand your forecast, you need to understand your budget. And lastly, if possible, and this isn't always easy for organizations, but if you can, try and have a multi-cloud strategy or try and limit that key vendor risk. It helps with largely negotiation power with the cloud providers, right? And the more negotiation power you've got as a customer, hopefully the more flexible they are for you, and hopefully the better the discounts are for you as well.
So look, James, we all know that if we are currently on-prem or on different cloud providers, one of the early parts of that is going to be some kind of migration, evaluation, or some kind of, modernization program. So thinking about those sorts of programs, when should we start considering these sorts of factors?
I think as early as possible. There is no time too early to start thinking from a cost-conscious mindset, right? If you're migrating to the cloud, you need to start thinking about it. Don't just do a lift and shift and then try and modernize later, because you're going to get ample costs immediately. So build with a cost-conscious mindset. Obviously, if you're going through a modernization program, you're already thinking in that mindset, which is fantastic, but then it's the right time to start looking at the sort of commitments and the reserved instances, the saving patterns, and all those other things. So it needs to be built in from the ground up, and that's whole principles of FinOps.
All right, James, as always, mate, it's been great having you here today talking about these things, but I want you to earn your money right here, right now. So I'm a supply chain leader, I'm about to walk in, I'm about to sign a new contract with a cloud provider. What is that one question that I need to ask?
You've got to ask, what happens if I want to leave my contract? There's so many different parts of this, right? Contracts and discounts come with lock-in. It's really, really tricky to get out of them, but you have to ask those questions. Think about commitments, reserved instances, saving plans. Am I technically locked in? Is my usage locked in? Can my spend decrease if it needs to decrease? Consider all the other costs as well and implications, egress, everything like that. But you need to make sure the contract works for you and is flexible for you.
Do you know what, guys? I think that's been massive. Leaders always plan for growth, but they need to plan for flexibility too. All right, James, I tell you what, man, that has been a game changer. But tell me this, where can leaders go to assess their cloud contracts even before they've signed a bad deal?
Well, strategically do a contract review process for people in the industry. And that can cover things as simple as commitments, saving plans, reserved instances, because in many regards, those are a contract. But also the bigger contracts, the enterprise agreements, the PPAs. So we can look at those, see what's good, what's not so good, the flexibility that might be able to be negotiated, and then take it from there.
You know what I mean? Hey guys, it doesn't get better than that. That sounded like another freebie, which is absolutely brilliant. What we're going to do is we're going to drop a link below. So if you're leading a supply chain transformation, whatever you do, don't let cloud lock-in trap you or your business for any unnecessary costs. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.